Welcome back to the Skids Giggles podcast. I am Pascal, chief instigator of the show and your host. I'm joined by my co-host and our resident engineer, the chainring to my crank, Bryson.
Hey Pascal, I'm really excited for this one. It's finally our time to get a little bit, let's say, meta and talk about something bigger than the bicycle itself. What was your impression?
Well, I think today's episode is probably one of our more significant recordings. We sat down with Nikolai Räber, who's the finance director of Velafrica, and I thought it was super interesting to hear the work that they're doing here in Switzerland, as well as in Africa, some of the impacts that they're having, and of course, COVID and etc. Here are some of the challenges that they've been dealing with over the last couple of years. What did you think?
I'm really grateful we finally have an opportunity to showcase some real good that's happening in the world. It's really an honor that we have a representative of Velafrica with us.
Well, before we get to that, let's just briefly do our spiel with the social and where you guys can find more information about the Skids and Giggles podcast. We are currently most active on our Instagram, where you can skid right into our DMs and follow along at Skids and Giggles. And you can find our website with all the relevant links and info under the URL skidsandgiggles.com. Also, if you guys like what we're doing and want to know what's up, just give us a follow on Spotify. Hit subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever else you listen to great podcasts. Catch you after the show. Well, welcome to the Skids and Giggles podcast. Nikolai, how's it going today?
Hello, everybody. Doing perfect.
Bryson, how's it going with you?
I'm also well. How are you doing, Pascal?
I'm well. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Today, we have an interesting one. It's slightly different than what we normally talk about. Normally, we talk about racing and trail building and riding trips and all these kind of things. But over the last year, as we've talked about previously, we have been collecting a bit of money, a couple of funds, and then we've donated that to an institution we like. And we always said we wanted to have someone on to talk about this. And so there we go. Here's Nikolai Räber. Maybe can you talk to us a little bit about what your role at this institution is and what the institution is?
Yeah, thanks, Pascal and Bryson, for having Velafrica on your show. As you said, you supported us previously, so I'm happy to talk a bit about what we're actually doing and why we think bikes are the best. The organization that I'm working for is called Velafrica. We are a social enterprise based in Bern, Switzerland. And what we do is we collect bikes in Switzerland and refurbish them with a network of integration workshops, all in Switzerland, and then we export them to Africa. So we have partners in about 7 countries in sub-Saharan Africa. And there we set up and invest in social enterprises, bike hubs, we call them. And we also help them to initiate vocational training programs or bring bikes to disadvantaged groups. So that's about it in a nutshell.
Okay. I mean, there's a lot going on in that intro statement already. So I'd like to dissect a couple of those things, maybe also for the listener. When you talk about social enterprise, what do you mean with that?
So social enterprise is generally considered as an organization that is not, for example, mainly dependent on donations. So we have a hybrid financing model, and we also want to bring kind of the entrepreneurial approach to whatever we are doing, be it in Switzerland or also be it in Africa. So in Africa, we want to support local entrepreneurs to set up their own business in the bike industry. So to create a sustainable company that is in the long run independent from us, that creates jobs, creates income, and kind of can basically define what they want to do based on how they see the local market. So that's what we understand as a social enterprise, and of course it has social in the name. So it's cycling and recycling is in our DNA. So we believe that this is doing good is part of just like what we want to do, right?
And in the long run, so what is the main goal for Velafrica? What is the future state when you've been really, really successful? And I think you're already very successful. What does that look like?
I mean, the demand for mobility and access to kind of reliable modes of transportation, such as cycling, is huge. Not only here in Europe, we see all over the place, in particularly urban areas, how cycling is kind of on the forefront. So we also see that in Africa there is this huge demand for safer, for faster means of transportation. And that's where we think and see that bikes can come in and play an important role. So we want to kind of help setting up the infrastructure to really promote cycling in certain countries where we are active. So it's bringing in the bikes, but also developing the know-how around cycling mobility, about maintenance, and of course, what we also see is then the whole culture that kind of is being created around cycling. So in Africa, often the bike is still kind of a poor man's or poor man's vehicle. So we can really see that our partners manage to kind of create similar movements and tendencies what we see here, that cycling can be leisure, can be fun, can be used as a mean to commute, can bring so much more to the people than just transport goods from A to B. So we want to support the people, bring them kind of a reliable and safe means and modes of transportation.
And your work here in Switzerland is pretty much a mirror image of what you do locally in Africa, just that you're doing it here locally with refugees, if I understand correctly.
The whole value chain is a bit different from what we do in Switzerland and what we do in Africa. So in Switzerland, we collect the bikes, as I mentioned in the intro, and then we have about 34 workshops in Switzerland that refurbish the bike. Refurbish means they check the bikes, they repair the bikes. So when they leave our workshops, they're in kind of top quality. And in those workshops, the bikes are kind of a means to a greater end also. So for the people who work in those social integration programs, for them it's kind of working on the bikes can have an added value. So it can be part of, as you mentioned, the refugees. It can be to kind of get used to the Swiss working culture. But it can also be for unemployed people to, as part of their coaching programs, to find another job or a new job and get back into the first labor market. So it's kind of the bike here in Switzerland is more part of a bigger goal, integration of people, whereas in Africa it's really part of the social enterprise. So bringing bikes to people. At the end of the day, people like you and me who just want to get a bike in Africa, and then they can go to one of our partners and find whatever bike they need, whatever color they want, whatever size they need, whatever type of bike they need. So the approach is obviously different. Here it's more collection and refurbishment, and in Africa it's social entrepreneurship, training, and mobility.
So I haven't been to Africa, but the kind of image in my mind is that, as you said, people are using these bikes for mobility, and they're not thought of as just normal ways to transport, and they're leaning more towards wanting to have cars. Kind of in like the other end of the spectrum, I see places like Denmark, who they really celebrate the bicycle as just a means of transportation and don't think of themselves as cyclists per se. Why is there not this kind of culture in Africa where they really do need this access to mobility, and the bicycle would facilitate that?
You mean the question is more leaning towards kind of the status symbol of a bicycle, if I understand you correctly?
Is it that? Is it a symbol there?
I mean, I can of course only talk for the countries and partners that I was, right. I mean, just to make that clear, it's again the cultural context in Africa is again very different from region to region and from city to city, from village to village, right. But generally, yes, the bike has been seen as I mentioned before, rather as a poor man or poor woman's mode of transportation, right? You have to use your personal force to move ahead, to transport goods. It's not associated with wealth, like when you can invest in a motorbike or in a car that can show that you have reached a certain level of income, and that you want to show kind of what you have achieved. So the bike has always been kind of at the bottom end of the status, how do you say, pyramid, and that could be a reason why it's not it has not reached yet the same level of appreciation that it has here, right? Because it's associated with work, with labor, with transportation goods to the market. So I assume that could be some of the reasons that it has not reached that level of kind of appreciation that it has here in Denmark or in the Netherlands, or also here in Switzerland, right? So there are some reasons, but as I said also before, we can see where we are active that change is happening, and it's just a matter of showing people kind of the different sides of a bike, of cycling, of different types of bikes, of high-end bikes, but also, and this is a really interesting thing, hey, the job as a bike mechanic is kind of a valuable job. It's an appreciated job. In particularly, for example, in Burkina Faso, everyone rides a bike. And even the first president, Sankara, in the 60s, came to office with a bike. So it's kind of the first time that a president came to work with a bike. So that was important for people, right? You wouldn't expect that today. Even there are few presidents who do that. So everyone is riding a bike, but still the job, bike mechanic, is really at the bottom end of kind of the status in society. Because why? It doesn't pay a lot. And everyone basically can do that if they fail school, if they don't find another job, because you can kind of learn more or less like becoming a bike mechanic, right? So it's at the bottom end, and of course, if there's not much status to it, you don't pay nothing for a service because it's just what everyone can and does, right? So what we see now is really when we invest in kind of in the infrastructure, in the tools, in the types of bikes, in the high-end bikes that the people donate here, and we can show, hey, there are different types of bikes. We can really see that the level and the appreciation for this job and the respect is increasing, and that's actually what our ultimate goal is, to show, hey, bike mechanics is kind of it's a great job, right? And you should be proud of it. You can make a living if you have good bikes, proper know-how. This is a service that has a decent value, and with that you can kind of set up your own future for your family, and that's actually where we want to head, right? To show everyone, hey, cycling is not just like a simple thing. It's way more, and it's way more diverse, and you can make a living out of it, right?
Definitely. I truly believe a bicycle is a humble machine that will change the world. And I think, through societal changes and technological changes, such as newer cargo bikes coming into the market, and just e-bikes in general, there's going to be a massive shift in this micromobility, as you call it. And it's going to bleed into all parts of the world, including parts of Africa. And they're going to see that there is real value. And especially if you have now a tremendous more amount of bikes, the use of a bicycle mechanic, or like the need for a bicycle mechanic, is going to go way up, and therefore the value of that service is going to go higher as well. And it's not going to be seen as this lowest level of job. And actually, I mean, I very much praise my mechanics that I visit, because they do top quality job. And myself, I want to have the best. Like when I do work on my bicycle myself, I do the best I can, and a professional mechanic is going to do much better. But I also praise him because he's even doing, the best he can. So it's a great profession, I would say.
You talked about Burkina Faso, and you talked about where that you're active in Africa, but we haven't talked about where exactly you're active at the minute. So maybe do you want to spend a couple of minutes on where you guys are active at the minute?
So we have two partners in Tanzania, in Arusha area, and in the rural Tanzania, Kagera area. That's on the west side of Lake Victoria, for those listeners who have been to Tanzania. We are in Madagascar. We are in Burkina Faso, Ghana, Gambia, Ivory Coast, and South Africa. So these are the countries where we have currently established partnerships. The different level of partnerships, I must say. So some are just small kind of merchants, also a bit from the 90s when all started. Whereas, as I mentioned, in Burkina Faso today, or in Tanzania, or in Madagascar, we have Bikes Hub that today really have a high turnover of bikes. So I'm talking about 5,000 plus bikes that they kind of manage to distribute already every year. They have jobs created. They have this vocational training program that I mentioned, or they also currently implement various social projects. So these are the countries where we are currently active. Yeah.
And maybe looking back, I mean, you've been with Velafrica for quite a few years now. So, what has been for you personally? What has been the most rewarding experience so far?
Yeah, rewarding. To be honest, it's when for me, the most kind of cool thing is, and I'm an entrepreneur myself, so I really live entrepreneurship, and I start to do stuff, let's say from scratch. So when we start setting up a hub, right? So we basically start from nothing. There's maybe a forest, some bushes, and we start cutting the trees with the local team, and we see kind of slowly how the hub evolves, right? So we bring in the first container of bikes, a lot of hustle. We don't know yet exactly how it works with the customs, delays, like everything. But like, because we're talking about physical goods, I just love to see how like the project, the infrastructure evolves, right? So you see the tangible kind of output of the work that you put in, and then of course the people that kind of are part of the project and really are passionate about what we are doing. I mean, I must admit that maybe not a lot of people also that we recruit locally, they at the beginning can imagine what is possible with bikes, right? So we usually recruit people who maybe have a business background, or we know from somewhere that they have been active, or they are like entrepreneurs. But it's not that we usually start with like bike entrepreneurs, because that's not what you find, like what we are looking for. So to see how those people really like start to realize, okay, wow, this is bikes, and this is something that has not been here yet, and now we kind of start to develop a business around it, a business plan, and people are coming, customers are coming, right? More bikes are coming. Suddenly, like companies, NGOs approach them to get like 100 bikes for their farmer. So to see kind of, yes, there is a demand and the need for those bikes and for the work that they do. I think those two parts, like the physical aspect and also kind of the joy of the people to really become cycling enthusiasts, this is great to see.
Oh yeah, we can see that. That is and also how you bring it across is really 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 cool. And yeah, I guess very rewarding work. Um, without blowing my own horn here, I've done some fundraising for you guys before, and I think it would be an interesting anecdote to hear from you, because those funds, they have been dedicated to this bike hub in Burkina Faso specifically, and it would be cool to hear from you how that has gone since then. So that fundraising was in 2017 in the context of the BC bike race at the time. So yeah, it would be cool to hear the story of the project since then.
Yeah, it was actually possible thanks to contribution like yours. Usually at the beginning, we are looking for funds from foundations, from private people who would like to support a project like that. So as I said, we were active in Burkina Faso quite some time. We had some partners and some loose distribution networks, but we realized from our experience in Tanzania that in order to structure kind of the whole importation, distribution, and to make it also more professional, it is possible, or it makes sense to set up like a decent structure, a company basically that only deals with bikes, right? So back then in 2017, we we had this idea to also set up a bike hub in Ouagadougou. That's the capital of Burkina Faso. And yeah, we gathered some of the people we knew that already took bikes from us. And we started over a period of maybe 1 year the discussion, hey, how such a hub could look like, what it needs, where should we put it, who should be involved. And the output was, again, we found the location and we started to kind of set up a bike workshop that today has a storage facility for almost 500 bikes. We have a workshop where we today either repair bikes, but also, maybe I can talk about that a bit later, we offer training to other mechanics. So we're doing a bigger initiative now to kind of train up to 700 youth in the next 3 years in Burkina Faso to become bike mechanics. And we have a small showroom. We have about 5 to 7 people now working there, sales, management, marketing, mechanics. So it was really possible to kind of set up a decent structure. It's called Faso Velo, so Burkina Faso and bicycle. And starting the work starts to get around in Ouagadougou, that there you can get high quality bikes from Switzerland. You get good service, good maintenance, spares, big issue, you can get good spares. So it has become kind of already a bit of a kind of a meeting point of also cyclists. We have one girl, she's now doing an internship and she's part of the national racing team in Burkina Faso. So she was just so skilled, so they wanted to keep her immediately as one of the main mechanics. So she's now part of this program. So from again just an idea, today we have a bike center that already manages to import 10 containers, 10 to 12 containers per year, and then of course distribute them in the city, but also important to bring it further out in the rural areas where bikes are very much needed.
This really does sound like a hub, like a place where a community can develop, rather than just like a typical bike shop where you'll find mechanics and some bikes for sale. You've got really people who want to come in and drop in and form a community there. Now, do you have like an affiliation with the owners or the people who run this hub, or are they having a independent kind of business of their own?
Faso Velo as such is a legal structure. It's a, how do you say, GmbH, company limited by guarantee. So Velafrica owns 20% of this company. This is important. An important thing that we realized in order also to just be part of the development. We only have 20%, but of course we can kind of see and help kind of out in with regard to the direction that the company should go. So and then we have other owners who own part of the company. But importantly, I mean, it's limited guarantee, and of course that's important for us, that should we make benefits one day, which it does not yet, the idea is really to reinvest then the surplus into the company or in any other social project. So that's a bit how we try to kind of help steering the direction, bring in our vision. But again, it's not, I think it's important to say that we don't think that we know and have to control everything. I mean, these are entrepreneurs, and we should give them the liberty also to develop their vision and to give them a bit the incentive also to create something that is their own. And if it's successful, maybe they also benefit from it. Again, we're talking about bikes. This is not like a $1 million business, but it should be kind of hopefully one day pay decent salaries to the people who are involved, and maybe also the entrepreneurs who are involved, if they are lucky, maybe they should also benefit from it, right? But with that, we think we can create the right incentives that everyone is super motivated to push this project. And see where it takes us.
And then these hubs such as Faso Velo, you guys offer a vocational training, and so you have applicants like a waiting list, or is it and do you train them to the same standard as like someone would receive in, say, Switzerland? And how do you facilitate that?
A good question. It's again a bit different in every country where we have a vocational training. In Burkina Faso, it's really a new approach. Previously, we tried to kind of focus on the needs of the company. So maybe we train 3 to 5 to 10 trainees in a 2 to 3 year training program, which is based on the curriculum also here in Switzerland, but of course adapted to the local needs. Also, often the skills of the mechanics is different, of course. When you graduate here and do a vocational training, you can read, you can write, you can do mathematics. You cannot expect that from people who go into bike mechanics. So, of course, the foundation is different, and you have to adopt the teaching style and the teaching content. So, having said that, in Burkina Faso, we move beyond the company lens. Let's put it like that, because as I mentioned before, we kind of want to uplift the whole bicycle industry in Burkina Faso. Now, this sounds a bit now like a big vision, but we see the potential that we can, with the right inputs, we can actually lift a lot of people that are already in that sector, and we see also a lot of the government officials appreciate this broader approach that we are doing now. And when I say broader approach, it means that actually we have identified 6 regions in Burkina Faso, and it's kind of, we move from top down. So in Ouagadougou, we have the main training center where we train like the most talented and skilled mechanics. We have identified them, and they went through a screening. They have a high level of reading and writing skills, and also technical skills already. Maybe they have done an apprenticeship in another area like car mechanics. So they have been trained, and they are being trained now, and then they themselves move into the different region where we have like decentralized training institutes. So there again, around those institutes are small workshops, and those workshops again have maybe a patron, a head of the workshop, or and they themselves again have maybe 1 or 2 apprenticeships or already young kids who work there, right? As I said, maybe if you cannot continue to school, you might end up as a bike mechanic, because that's maybe your father did it, someone in the family, you have nowhere else to go, so you become a bike. So we have like this network of people who are involved, low skilled, and now we kind of are kind of moving top down to kind of improve the know-how of the people who are then training the people around their kind of area of activities. And that's kind of how we try to dissolve the know-how within the industry, right? So, of course, it needs different levels of training and skills, again, different methods, different pedagogical skills. But that's kind of how we try to do it at the moment. It's obviously different from how it looks like here. But still, I mean, the content at the end of the day is very similar what you have to know as a bike mechanic, right?
And so, say, for example, you go into this program, you graduate doing well, you get sent to one of these decentralized areas, and you're helping, and you really help this place succeed, and other young people also kind of follow in your footsteps. You're seen as maybe this person who has more potential. Is there somewhere else or something else that can happen for those people? Can they kind of make the way up some other ladder, or is there another maybe path for them?
In Burkina Faso, we don't know yet what opportunities this training will give them. In Madagascar or in Tanzania, where we're already doing it a bit longer, we can see that because we kind of have a formalized training, this gives a certain level of kind of accreditation that you have done a training, that you have acquired a certain set of skills. In Madagascar, for example, the training program is even now kind of accredited by the government. So, of course, with that kind of paper, you can apply in a company and get a job. And we see that it works. Youth, they find a job not in the bike industry, somewhere else. But also, of course, some youth they graduate and they become managers of small bike hubs, bike ateliers that are closely linked to the bigger hubs that we have already now. So of course that's also like an idea to really like create a network of people who know the bikes, who have the tools, who have been trained, and by that we kind of can guarantee also in more rural areas the proper maintenance of the bikes that someone might buy one day, right? So you don't have to come back to the capital to get your bike fixed because the local mechanic maybe does not have the tools or the know-how to fix it. So what they usually do, they just take off the parts when they cannot repair it. So the bike at the end is just a frame. It works. You can ride with it, but of course you kind of miss out a bit on the technical specifics of a bike. But that's how it works. And by bringing the mechanics kind of to the people, we can kind of help to keep the bike in a good shape, right? So I see your question, and it should be definitely also the goal that maybe not everyone wants to stay in bike mechanics, and they hopefully find a job wherever they are needed, that they can show that they have acquired a certain set of skills.
What do you currently use the most resources for? I mean, obviously there's a lot of capital that you use, I assume, but in terms of time, where do you spend the most time and the most money? Where do you spend the most of your energy on?
I mean, the people here in Switzerland that kind of are responsible for collecting the bikes, maintaining the partnerships with the workshops in Switzerland, communication. So those people, they do a great effort in making sure that we actually have enough bikes available for our partners in Africa, right? Because without the bikes here in Switzerland, there is no story to tell, let's put it like that. The partners to some extent are dependent on the bikes from here. So a lot of time and passion is also invested here to find the bikes, to bring them as efficient as possible to our partners, to refurbish them, and then to load them into containers. So as you might imagine, logistics in Switzerland is not so cheap. So of course, whenever we have to, bikes come from all over Switzerland, right? Basically from wherever you live to one of our workshops, it has to be transported. So that takes quite some resources to do that and orchestrate that. So I would say the whole work, of course, here in Switzerland is resource consuming. And if you think about it, I mean, we do like, usually it's the other way around, right? How the supply chains work. So we bring a product from a very high quality country abroad, and of course it's kind of to some extent surreal to do that. That's why it's such a crazy and beautiful idea. We produce in one of the most expensive countries in the world, right? And bring it maybe to areas where the purchasing power of the households is not so high and fragile. So this crazy idea, of course, uses resources and donations here in Switzerland, that we can kind of maintain this whole supply chain that it needs. We're dependent on like a lot of associations, individuals who volunteer their time, who donate money. That we can actually manage to bring those bikes at an affordable price to Africa.
And you've mentioned supply chains, and supply chains is in everyone's mind at the minute, certainly in the bike industry, and of course in a lot of other industries as well. How has COVID interfered with all of your operations?
Yeah, I mean, there's the aspect here in Switzerland, right? When it all started, and of course there was a bit of a time leap when kind of COVID started to also unfold in Africa. So we were always like observing, okay, actually, or trying to understand what's going on here in Switzerland. How will it affect the collection, the production side in Switzerland, and then the international logistics that actually got completely kind of, how to say, completely disturbed at some point, as you might know. And then what's going on in Africa? How will COVID affect the people there? How will governments react? So it was, for us, it was quite a challenging time to just plan. Actually, we couldn't plan, to be honest. We were just like playing around with kind of scenarios how it could play out. So maybe I start in Africa again. I mean, what you could see is, of course, that a bike in times of COVID actually had a huge impact, right? I mean, often people ride in minibuses, in buses, where then, of course, infection rates are higher. So the bike was actually a mean of transport that was ideal for this type of time. But of course, also, I mean, there were these sanitary measures. There were lockdowns between cities. People couldn't or less go out, and it was not sure how it would evolve. But generally, except for South Africa, where the situation is still very bad, as you know, actually businesses in general continued, of course, with the necessary measures to some extent. But they didn't. Our partners didn't experience the same level of closures that we experienced here in Switzerland. So in Switzerland, we also closed our workshop for 1 month in spring, because it was just, I guess, like everybody, we didn't know like how to handle it and what would be best. So we closed the workshop. So of course we had a disruption of the supply chain, of the provision of bikes that actually our partner needed, right? To uphold their business, and also a bit more maintenance services were needed in Switzerland, because everyone suddenly was riding a bike, and our partners not all of them only produce bikes, so they also often have maybe a workshop, and then I mean the waiting times for getting a repair was crazy, right? During COVID. So the shift maybe focused a bit at some point to reparations in Switzerland, then actually producing for export. So we had a bit of a breakdown, but not substantially. I mean, luckily, we had at some point our storage was empty. And I guess also people at some point realized that they could maybe sell their bike instead of donating it, because just everyone was looking for a bike suddenly, and even maybe a not so good bike you could still sell. So we had a bit of problems getting enough raw materials at some point. But it was a bit of, it went back a bit, the bike numbers, but by now it kind of recovered. And we are back on track, getting enough bikes. Of course, still we are looking for more bikes in general, but it's not that we had like a super reduction of bikes. But still, it was a tough time to coordinate those different worlds and keep up with what is needed and where bikes are needed, and sorry. Yeah, so ambivalent feeling towards COVID, of course. I mean, with all the difficult situations that were created. Of course, also personal families that were affected in Africa and in Switzerland. So, yeah.
Finding the raw materials, for example, the bicycles, is the first step in all of this. And how is it that you found was the most effective or best way to reach these people who want to donate their bike?
In general?
Yeah, and kind of in general, like what's the kind of did you have like a campaign plan, or is there basically a word of mouth system that works really well? How is that working?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think still we have quite a bit of a potential in Switzerland. I mean, a lot of bikes are sold every year. I think it's about 450,000, according to some statistics, and I assume there are a lot more in sellers, and we only collect about 30 to 40,000 a year. So there is still a huge potential, I think, to collect those bikes. So I assume one reason is that people maybe don't know yet about Velafrica enough. So what we do is, of course, yeah, we have different channels how we try to bring out the word. I mean, from social media to our own magazine, and then also, of course, some partnerships with maybe other magazines, in order to promote the story, just to inform people that they can do that. I mean, there are also various initiatives on the level of certain municipalities or cities where they kind of inform their people, their citizens, that this is an option, to donate a bike, to Velafrica. So yeah, I think I would say we have still rather the classical communication tools that we are using. So if anyone is out there and has a great idea how to spread the word, how we can reach more people, feel free to approach you guys, and you let me know. But yeah, that's about how we do it at the moment.
For example, you have some passionate people who even reach out to you to organize their own collection for you to then come in and take those bikes in a larger quantity, a lot, let's say. What's the feedback from these individuals who donate their time and energy to do this? I mean, it's a great cause.
I guess that's the overall kind of argument that we hear, that it's just that the people want to be part of this story, and you can become part of it because there are so many opportunities how you can become engaged, right? Be it, as you mentioned, a collection event. You can do it in your neighborhood, in a city, or in your vicinity, or wherever you wanna do it, with your association, with your maybe sports association, with your I don't know, with your company. You can collect bikes, you can organize a bike race like you guys did, and collect some money, and become part of the story. And yeah, I mean, for me it's really important to show really that, and I think that's the beauty about the idea, that it is not just that you donate maybe your time or your money, but you have your bike that you probably, or a lot of people have kind of a connection to, right? Um, mm, you use it over, some people come and say, hey, this, I used it for 25 years and now it's a time, and I wanna donate it to you guys, because we know it's there's like a greater purpose that you guys are following, and we can show, and we can prove that, hey, this bike goes to someone who really like needs this bike, and then choice then a better kind of mode of transportation. So I think it's just it's the story that is simple enough to understand. I mean, you don't need to explain anyone why a bike has such a big impact. Everyone knows. Most of the people know. Unfortunately, not all of them know. Um, but a lot of people know, and this is kind of, I think, a good basis to find people who want to become engaged, right?
Definitely.
You have anything more, Bryson?
No, but I was going to ask Nikolai, anything special that you wanted to say that we never touched on? Did we meet everything?
Yeah, I guess I hope we managed to kind of show a bit like what it takes to bring a bike from Switzerland to Africa, and also that Velafrica tries to kind of not just kind of bring old goods to Africa, but we really thought about how can we kind of reach the potential of the bike, kind of that it can unfold the potential in many ways, to kind of help people to really build a future around the bike, also in Africa. I hope I managed to kind of showcase that.
Definitely have.
And as I said, yeah, I mean, there are various ways how you can become engaged yourself. If you have a bike that you don't use anymore, if you have maybe contacts to the bike industry that you think, hey, why are the big players not yet in Africa? I mean, we don't know of any big players that sell bikes or bike parts in Africa, and we are kind of preparing the ground for them to kind of enter this market.
Mm-hmm.
So we are sure it's just a matter of time, and we hope that we can help some of the local entrepreneurs to kind of, once the moment is there, that they can really benefit from that, and we can really kind of help create this bike movement also in different areas in Africa. So if you have contacts that you want to let us know about, if you know some companies maybe that are interested in helping psych mobility to gain more traction, or want to support some social projects in Africa, let us know. And there are many options how you can support and yeah, become part of the story like you guys did, and yeah, supported us already like in different ways.
Mm.
Well, one part of the story we haven't heard, and I think that would be a great one to close out, is we haven't talked about how you stand to the bicycle. How does the bike figure in your life?
I mean, it's a nice question to end, I think, this podcast. I mean, I'm, to be honest, I'm not a hardcore bike rider, like probably many people out there. But for me, it's just like, still, it's like an everyday thing, right? So either I commute to work to bike, I talk about how we can kind of improve the environment for cycling in Switzerland, in Africa, like basically every day. And of course, it's just, be it in Switzerland, where I just like use the bike to kind of, and on the bike the best ideas kind of happen, right? So if you go out for a ride here next to the mountain here at Räber, Zurich, take my gravel bike out and just go a bit and have fun. This is the moments where I can kind of get my energy and think about actually new ideas, how we can improve what we are doing. But also, I mean, to ride in a street in Abidjan with your bike, where nobody cares about bike riders, this is just a crazy and awesome thing, right? And it's when you talk about cycling is freedom, that's what it is, but it's also crazy. But you feel like you're doing something like new that nobody does or few people have done before. I mean, we're talking about riding a bike, right, in the traffic, but it's kind of, you want to show everyone that, hey, why are you sitting in your stupid car in a traffic jam for I don't know how long, while we guys are just having fun on the road and enjoying ourselves. This is the best feeling that I have when I'm in Africa and just enjoying myself, going around with partners in this crazy traffic with the bike.
That's awesome. And as you said, it's a great note to end on. Nikolai, thank you very much for your time. This was really interesting. If our listeners want to find out more about you and about Velafrica, where can they find you?
You can find us on velafrica.ch, or of course also on our social media channels, Instagram, Facebook. Drop us an email. And yeah, we hope to get in touch with you.
Nice. We'll put those up in the show notes, and you guys can find it there. Nikolai, thank you again. Super awesome.
Hey, thanks guys for having me. It was great talking to you.
Thank you. Thanks for listening. We really hope you enjoyed this episode. As we mentioned at the top of the show, you can find all the links and the relevant info to this episode in the show notes. Also, if you enjoyed this episode, why don't you share it with your riding buddies? It really helps us grow our show and reach more cool people like you.
That's great advice, Pascal. I really enjoyed making the episode as well. And I'm really looking forward to all the cool stuff we're going to be doing in 2022. So stay tuned, guys.